The first gunshot echoed across the dusty plains of Montana Territory, 1873, as Tabitha Owens clutched the torn letter in her trembling hands. The stagecoach had left without her again, leaving nothing but a cloud of dust and broken promises in its wake. She stood alone at the weathered way station, her luggage scattered around her feet like abandoned dreams, tears streaming down her face as the realization sank in. Her fiancé had never intended to meet her here. "I've been left behind," she said to no one in particular, her voice barely audible above the prairie wind. From the shadow of the station's porch, a tall figure stepped forward, sunlight catching on his silver spurs. The cowboy tipped his hat back, revealing kind eyes that had witnessed too much of the harsh frontier to be easily shocked. His weathered face softened as he approached her. "Not anymore, you're with me," he said gently, extending a calloused hand. "Name's Finn Abelson. Reckon you could use some help, madam." Tabitha stared at his outstretched hand, uncertain. Everything she'd planned, the wedding in Helena, the new life she'd left Ohio for, had disappeared with that stagecoach. But something in the stranger's steady gaze offered something she desperately needed: safety. "Tabitha Owens," she replied, reluctantly accepting his hand. "I was supposed to meet my fiancé, Charles. We were to be married next week." Her voice caught. "The station manager just gave me this letter. Charles, he's married someone else. Someone with better prospects and connections." Finn's jaw tightened, but his voice remained gentle. "Some men don't deserve the good fortune that finds them." He glanced at her luggage. "You got folks back home who can help?" Tabitha shook her head. "My parents passed last winter. I sold everything to come west." The enormity of her situation crashed over her. "I have nowhere to go." The cowboy studied the horizon, seemingly weighing something in his mind before turning back to her. "My ranch is half a day's ride from here. Nothing fancy, but growing steady. Got a spare room in the main house where my sister stayed before she married. It's yours until you figure things out." "Why would you help a stranger?" Tabitha asked, suspicious despite her desperate circumstances. Finn smiled, slight creases forming at the corners of his eyes. "Been stranded myself once or twice. Besides, my mother would haunt me proper if I left a lady alone at this godforsaken stop." He gestured to the desolate station, where only the bored-looking manager remained, cleaning his fingernails with a knife. "I don't need charity," Tabitha said, though her options were painfully few. "Not offering charity, Miss Owens. Offering neighborliness. Montana Territory's harsh enough without facing it alone." He whistled sharply, and a magnificent chestnut stallion trotted around from the back of the station. "This here's Copper. He's steady enough for both of us until we can fetch your things with the wagon." Tabitha hesitated, clutching her reticule tightly. Everything proper society had taught her screamed against accepting this stranger's help. Yet the alternative, remaining alone at this isolated way station with night approaching, seemed far more dangerous. "I can pay you," she offered, reaching for the small pouch of coins in her bag. Finn shook his head. "Put that away. You might need it later." He began gathering her smaller bags. "We should get moving before sundown. Mountain lions get curious after dark." The mention of mountain lions made Tabitha's decision for her. "Very well, Mr. Abelson. I accept your offer of temporary lodging just until I can make other arrangements." "Glad to hear it," he said, securing her trunk to his saddle with practiced efficiency. "And it's just Finn, if you don't mind." "Finn," she repeated, testing the name on her tongue. With surprising strength for her small frame, Tabitha allowed Finn to help her onto the horse before he swung up behind her. The closeness to a strange man made her stiffen, but as Copper began a steady trot away from the station, she found herself relaxing incrementally against his solid presence. "That letter," Finn said after they'd ridden in silence for a while. "You want to keep it?" Tabitha looked down at Charles's cruel words, still clutched in her hand. With sudden determination, she tore it into pieces and let the prairie wind carry them away. "No," she said firmly. "I don't believe I do." Finn's ranch appeared on the horizon just as the setting sun painted the Montana sky in brilliant oranges and pinks. The modest homestead nestled in a small valley, protected by gentle hills and bordered by a creek that glinted in the fading light. A sturdy log house stood as the centerpiece, with a barn, corral, and several outbuildings arranged nearby. It wasn't grand, but it was well maintained, the mark of a man who took pride in his work. "It's not much," Finn said as they approached, "but it's home." "It's beautiful," Tabitha replied honestly, taking in the peaceful scene. As they neared the house, a gray-haired man emerged from the barn, waving enthusiastically. "That's Emmett," Finn explained. "Been with me since I started. Fought alongside my pa in the war." Emmett's weathered face broke into a wide grin as they rode into the yard. "About time you got back, boss," he called out, then stopped short at the sight of Tabitha. "Well now, didn't expect company." Finn dismounted and helped Tabitha down. "Emmett, this is Miss Tabitha Owens. She'll be staying with us for a spell. Miss Owens, this is Emmett Kelly, the finest ranch hand in the territory and a terrible cook." Emmett removed his hat, revealing a balding head, and gave a slight bow. "Madam, pleasure to meet you." "Don't listen to him about my cooking. I make a fine beans and bacon." "The pleasure is mine, Mr. Kelly," Tabitha replied with a small smile, appreciating the old man's immediate acceptance. "Miss Owens had some trouble at the station," Finn explained, keeping the details vague. "I offered her the spare room until she sorts things out." Emmett nodded sagely. "Well, you're welcome here, Mississippi. I'll fetch your bags." As Emmett busied himself with her luggage, Finn led Tabitha toward the house. It's not fancy, mind you, just simple living. The main house was indeed simple, but comfortable. The large central room served as both kitchen and living area, with a stone fireplace dominating one wall. A wooden table with 4 chairs sat near a cast-iron stove, while a couple of worn armchairs faced the hearth. Handmade curtains framed the windows, and a colorful rag rug covered part of the plank floor. "My sister made those curtains before she left," Finn explained, noticing Tabitha's gaze. "She had a talent for making this place feel like more than just a man's quarters." "They're lovely," Tabitha said, feeling suddenly self-conscious standing in this stranger's home. The reality of her situation alone, hundreds of miles from everything familiar, dependent on the kindness of a man she'd just met, threatened to overwhelm her. Finn seemed to sense her unease. "Your room's this way," he said, leading her to a small but clean bedroom off the main area. "It's not much, but the mattress is stuffed with fresh straw, and the sheets are clean." The room was simple, a narrow bed with a patchwork quilt, a small dresser with a mirror above it, and a rocking chair by the window. A faded sampler on the wall read, "Home is where the heart finds peace." "This was your sister's room?" Tabitha asked, running her fingers along the quilt. "Yes, madam. Rebecca's. She married a shopkeeper in Helena 2 years back. Got 3 little ones now." Pride tinged his voice. Emmett appeared in the doorway with her trunk. "Where would you like this, miss?" "By the wall is fine, thank you," Tabitha replied. When Emmett had gone, Finn lingered in the doorway. "I'll let you get settled. Supper'll be ready soon, nothing fancy, just venison stew tonight." "Mr. Abelson, Finn," Tabitha began, "I want you to know that I intend to find work as soon as possible. I won't impose on your hospitality for long." Finn studied her for a moment, his expression unreadable. "Miss Owens, there's no rush. Montana winter's coming on fast, and jobs that would suit a lady are scarce this time of year. You're welcome here as long as you need." After he left, Tabitha sank onto the bed, the emotions of the day finally catching up with her. Charles's betrayal, the terrifying prospect of being stranded, and now this unexpected sanctuary, it was too much to process. She allowed herself a few minutes of quiet tears before straightening her spine. She was alive. She had shelter, and despite the cruel twist of fate that had left her abandoned in this wild territory, she would find her way. Tabitha Owens had not come west to be defeated. After washing her face in the basin provided, she changed into a simpler dress and joined the men for supper. The venison stew was surprisingly good, accompanied by fresh biscuits and strong coffee. The conversation flowed easily as Emmett regaled her with tales of the area's early days. "So what brings you to Montana territory, Miss Owens?" Emmett finally asked, after Finn shot him a warning glance. Tabitha set down her spoon. There was no point in hiding the truth. "I came to marry a man who apparently had other plans," she said evenly. "He sent me a letter delivered today explaining that he'd found someone more suitable." Emmett's bushy eyebrows shot up. "Well, if that don't beat all. After you traveled all this way." "Indeed." Tabitha managed a weak smile. "It seems my journey had a different purpose than I imagined." His loss, Finn said quietly, meeting her eyes across the table. The sincerity in his gaze made Tabitha look away, her cheeks warming. I'm trained as a teacher, she said, changing the subject. I taught at a school in Ohio for 3 years before. She trailed off. In any case, I hope to find similar work here. Finn leaned forward, interest sparking in his eyes. A teacher? Now that's something this area sorely needs. Nearest school's in Helena, too far for most of the children around these parts. The Russell place has 5 youngsters alone, Emmett added. And the Millers have 3. Plenty more scattered about. Are you suggesting I could teach here? Tabitha asked, the first flicker of hope kindling in her chest. Finn nodded thoughtfully. Might be worth considering. The families have talked about pooling resources for a school, but no one's taken charge of the matter. He gestured around them. I've got land. Could spare lumber for a schoolhouse come spring. Tabitha struggled to find words. That's very generous, but I couldn't possibly ask you to. You're not asking. Finn interrupted gently. I'm offering. This land needs more than just cattle and crops to thrive. It needs communities, families, education. Something in his expression softened. My mom was a teacher before she married Pa. Always said learning was as essential as breathing. That night, lying in the unfamiliar bed, Tabitha listened to the sound of the wind across the plains and the occasional distant howl of a wolf. The future she'd planned had vanished, but perhaps a new one was taking shape, one she'd never considered, in this wild, beautiful land. Her last thought before drifting to sleep was of Finn's kind eyes and the way he'd said, "Not anymore, you're with me." For the first time since receiving Charles's letter, Tabitha felt something other than despair. It might have been hope. Morning came with a chorus of roosters and the smell of coffee brewing. Tabitha dressed quickly in her simplest day dress, braided her chestnut hair, and ventured into the main room. Finn stood at the stove, frying bacon in a cast-iron skillet. "Good morning," she said, surprised to find him cooking. "I expected Mr. Kelly would be preparing breakfast." Finn turned, a smile warming his features. "Emmett's checking on a new calf. Besides, bacon's about the only thing I can cook without burning." He gestured to the coffee pot. "Help yourself. Cups are on the shelf." As they ate breakfast, Finn outlined the day ahead. "Need to ride out to check the north pasture fence. You're welcome to come along if you'd like to see more of the ranch." The invitation surprised her. "I wouldn't want to be in the way. Perhaps I could help around the house instead." "Nothing needs doing that can't wait," Finn assured her. "Fresh air might do you good after yesterday." Tabitha hesitated. In Ohio, she'd rarely ridden except in carriages. "I'm not much of a horsewoman," she admitted. "Got a gentle mare named Daisy who's perfect for beginners," Finn said. "But no pressure. The offer stands if you're interested." An hour later, Tabitha found herself atop the promised mare, a placid chestnut with a white blaze. Finn had provided her with an old pair of his sister's riding clothes, practical trousers, and a flannel shirt that felt scandalously comfortable after years of corsets and heavy skirts. "You look like you were born to it," Finn commented as they set out, Copper walking patiently beside Daisy. Tabitha laughed, the sound surprising her. "I assure you, I wasn't. But there's something liberating about this way of dressing." They rode through rolling grasslands dotted with patches of ponderosa pine. Finn pointed out landmarks and shared stories of the land's history, including the indigenous peoples who had hunted these plains for generations before settlers arrived. "The Blackfeet still pass through occasionally," he explained. "I try to maintain good relations. Traded with them last spring beef for some fine leather work." "You speak as if you respect them," Tabitha observed. "I do. This was their home long before it was mine." Finn's expression grew serious. Too many newcomers forget that. As they crested a small rise, Finn reined in Copper and dismounted. "This is what I wanted to show you." Tabitha gasped as she took in the panoramic view. The ranch spread out below them, while beyond it stretched the vast Montana landscape, rolling hills giving way to distant mountains, their peaks already dusted with early snow. "It's magnificent," she breathed, carefully dismounting with Finn's help. "This is my favorite spot on the whole ranch," he admitted, leading her to a flat boulder where they could sit. "I come here to think, especially when decisions need making." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, the autumn sun warming them despite the crisp air. "May I ask you something, Finn?" Tabitha finally said. "Of course. Why did you really help me yesterday? The truth, please." Finn considered her question, his gaze on the distant mountains. When I first came to Montana, I was running from something memories of the war, mostly. Had nothing but copper and the clothes on my back. He paused. First winter, I nearly died. An old trapper found me half frozen in a blizzard, took me in. Didn't ask questions, just gave me shelter until I could stand on my own feet again. He turned to look at her directly. I believe we're put in each other's paths for reasons we don't always understand right away. Yesterday, you needed help. Today, maybe you're helping me remember why this land matters because of the people on it, not just the cattle or crops. His honesty touched something deep in Tabitha. Thank you, she said simply. For everything. On their return ride, Finn showed her the spot where he thought a schoolhouse might work, a level area near a small creek, not too far from the main house, but accessible to neighboring ranches. The children could come by wagon in good weather, he explained. In winter, some might need to board. We could add rooms to the schoolhouse for that purpose. Tabitha found herself caught up in his vision. You've given this considerable thought in a short time. Finn's expression turned sheepish. Truth is, I've been thinking about a school for a while. Just needed the right teacher to come along. That evening, as they sat by the fire after supper, Tabitha found herself sharing stories of her teaching days in Ohio. Finn listened attentively, asking thoughtful questions about her methods and the books she'd used. You really care about education, she remarked, surprised by his interest. Never had much formal schooling myself, he admitted. My mother taught me to read and write before she passed. After that, I learned by doing and making plenty of mistakes along the way. He stoked the fire, sending sparks up the chimney. Always figured if I had children someday, they'd have better opportunities. Do you? Tabitha asked before she could stop herself. Have children, I mean. Finn shook his head. No, madam. Never married. He gave her a sidelong glance. Came close once, before the war. Elizabeth was her name. She couldn't wait while I was fighting, married a banker instead. I'm sorry, Tabitha said softly. Don't be. We weren't right for each other. She wanted city life, fine things. I always dreamed of open spaces. He gestured around them. This life isn't for everyone. No. Tabitha agreed, thinking of Charles and his ambitions for wealth and status, ambitions that apparently hadn't included her. But it has its own kind of beauty. As days turned into weeks, Tabitha found herself settling into life at the Abelson ranch. She insisted on earning her keep, taking over much of the cooking and household management. Her city-bred skills were initially ill-suited to frontier living, but she proved a quick study, learning to make soap from rendered fat, bake bread in the temperamental wood stove, and even assist with minor veterinary issues among the livestock. One morning in early November, she was kneading dough when Finn burst through the door, his expression unusually animated. Got news, he announced, stamping snow from his boots. Just rode back from Miller's place. The families are meeting this Saturday to discuss the school. They want to meet you. Tabitha's hands stilled in the dough. So soon? But we haven't even. Words spread about the teacher staying at Abelson's, Finn explained, helping himself to coffee. Folks are excited. The Millers have offered to host the meeting after their daughter's wedding celebration. A wedding? Tabitha felt a pang, remembering her own thwarted plans. Finn seemed to read her thoughts. You don't have to go if it's too difficult. No, she said firmly, resuming her kneading with vigor. I'll go. It's time I met more people, especially if I'm to teach their children. The Miller homestead was filled to bursting with neighbors from miles around, all gathered to celebrate young Sarah Miller's marriage to James Foster, a blacksmith from Helena. After the simple ceremony, conducted by a traveling preacher, the house transformed into a whirlwind of music, dancing, and feasting. Tabitha stood near the wall, watching the festivities with a mixture of joy and wistfulness. She wore her best dress, a deep blue wool that brought out the rich auburn highlights in her hair, and had received warm welcomes from everyone she'd met, yet she still felt like an outsider. Not much for dancing. Finn appeared beside her, looking handsome in a clean shirt and vest, his usually unruly hair combed neatly. I enjoy dancing very much, she replied. I'm just observing for now. Well, Miss Owens, he said with a formal bow, would you do me the honor? Before she could protest, he'd led her onto the makeshift dance floor where other couples were twirling to a lively fiddle tune. Finn proved to be a surprisingly good dancer, guiding her confidently through the steps. "Where did you learn to dance like this?" she asked, breathless from a particularly energetic turn. "My mother insisted," he replied with a grin. "Said no son of hers would stomp around like a buffalo at social gatherings." Tabitha laughed, the sound merging with the music. For the first time in months, perhaps years, she felt truly lighthearted. As the evening progressed, Tabitha was introduced to families from surrounding homesteads. Mrs. Miller, a robust woman with a no-nonsense manner, pulled her aside to discuss the school plans. "We've got 12 children of school age within riding distance," she explained. "More if you count the Petersons up north. The men have agreed to provide lumber and labor for building come spring thaw." "That's wonderful," Tabitha said, trying to contain her excitement. "What about books and supplies?" "We've all been saving. Not much, mind you, but enough to start. And Reverend Williams and Helena says the church back east might send donations." After the formal discussion, during which the families unanimously approved Tabitha as their future teacher, the celebration resumed. Tabitha found herself partnered with various ranchers and farmers for subsequent dances, each eager to tell her about their children and express gratitude for her willingness to teach. During a pause in the music, she stepped outside for fresh air. The night was clear and cold, stars blazing across the vast Montana sky with an intensity she'd never seen in Ohio. "Beautiful night," Finn said quietly, joining her on the porch. He draped a warm shawl over her shoulders. "Thought you might need this." "Thank you." She pulled the shawl tighter, grateful for his thoughtfulness. "Everyone's been so welcoming. It's more than I expected. Folks around here understand the value of community," Finn replied. "Winter's harsh. Spring brings flooding. Summer can burn crops with drought. We survive by helping each other." They stood in comfortable silence, watching their breath form clouds in the frigid air. "I should thank you properly," Tabitha said suddenly. "For everything you've done. You've given me more than shelter, Finn. You've given me purpose again." In the silvery moonlight, his expression was difficult to read. "You don't owe me thanks, Tabitha. Having you at the ranch these past weeks has been—" He seemed to search for the right word. "It's been a pleasure." Something in his tone made her heart quicken. The way he looked at her, as if seeing something precious, stirred feelings she'd been carefully suppressing. Charles's betrayal was still a raw wound, and she'd vowed not to be so foolish again. Yet standing here with Finn, she couldn't deny the growing connection between them. The moment was interrupted by Mrs. Miller calling everyone inside for the bride's cake. As they turned to go in, Finn's hand brushed hers, perhaps accidentally, perhaps not. Either way, Tabitha felt the touch like a current running through her, warming her despite the winter chill. The weeks leading up to Christmas brought heavy snows that transformed the landscape into a pristine white wilderness. Tabitha found herself effectively snowbound at the ranch, but far from idle. Between planning lessons for her future students and keeping the household running, she began teaching Emmett to read better. "Never had much schooling," the old ranch hand admitted during their first lesson. "Can sign my name and read simple words, but that's about it." "Everyone starts somewhere," Tabitha assured him. "By spring, you'll be reading the newspaper from Helena." One evening, as they sat by the fire after Emmett had retired, Finn presented Tabitha with a small wooden box. "Made this for you," he said, uncharacteristically nervous. "For your teaching supplies." Tabitha opened it to find a beautifully crafted writing slope with compartments for pens, ink, and paper. The wood was polished to a soft sheen, and her initials were carved delicately into the lid. "Finn, it's exquisite," she breathed, running her fingers over the smooth surface. "Did you make this yourself?" He nodded, pleased by her reaction. "Been working on it evenings in the barn. Wanted you to have something special for Christmas. But Christmas is still 2 weeks away. Figured you might want to use it before then. Besides," he added with a slight smile, "never been good at waiting once I've finished making something." The gift touched her deeply. It represented not just his skill as a craftsman, but his support for her new role in the community. "I love it," she said simply. "Thank you." Christmas morning dawned clear and cold. Tabitha woke early to prepare a special breakfast: sourdough pancakes with preserved berry compote, a treat she'd been saving for the occasion. She'd also used some of her precious savings to purchase small gifts: a new pipe and tobacco for Emmett, and for Finn, a fine leather-bound journal she'd ordered through the general store in Helena. After breakfast and the exchange of gifts, Finn surprised her by hitching the horses to a sleigh. "Thought we might pay a visit to some neighbors," he explained. "The Russells invited us for Christmas dinner. Said they're eager to introduce their children to their new teacher." Bundled in blankets, they glided across the snow-covered prairie, the sleigh runners making a rhythmic swishing sound that blended with the jingling of the horses' bells. Tabitha couldn't remember when she'd last felt so content. "I've been thinking," Finn said as they traveled, "about the schoolhouse." "Oh." Tabitha looked at him curiously. "The snow's too deep for building now, but I could start cutting lumber. By the time spring comes, we'll be ready to raise the walls." He glanced at her. "That is, if you're certain you want to stay." The question hung between them, weighted with meaning beyond just her teaching plans. "I am," she said firmly. "Montana feels more like home now than Ohio ever did." His smile was worth the cold journey. "Glad to hear it." The Russell family welcomed them warmly. Their homestead was smaller than Finn's ranch, but neat and well-maintained. 5 children, ranging from 4 to 12 years old, regarded Tabitha with a mixture of shyness and curiosity. "Children, this is Miss Owens," Mrs. Russell announced. "She'll be your teacher come spring." The oldest boy, William, stepped forward. "Ma says you know about mathematics and geography and such," he said earnestly. "Could you teach me about navigation? I want to be a ship captain someday." Tabitha smiled at his ambition. "The principles of navigation work on land as well as sea. We'll certainly include that in our studies." Throughout the afternoon, the Russell children peppered her with questions about what they'd learn and what books they'd read. Tabitha found herself genuinely excited by their enthusiasm, already mentally cataloging lessons tailored to their interests. Finn watched her interaction with the children, a thoughtful expression on his face. On the sleigh ride home, as twilight painted the snow-covered landscape in soft purple hues, he seemed unusually quiet. "Is something troubling you?" Tabitha finally asked. Finn hesitated before responding. "Just thinking about how natural you are with children. You'll make a wonderful teacher for this community." "Thank you," she said, sensing there was more he wasn't saying. "And someday," he continued, his eyes fixed on the horizon, "you'll make a wonderful mother." The comment caught her off guard. I haven't thought much about that since Charles." She trailed off, surprised to realize the pain of that betrayal had dulled considerably. "Sorry," Finn said quickly. "Didn't mean to presume." "No, it's all right." Tabitha gathered her courage. "Actually, being here has made me reconsider many things I once took for granted, including what I want for my future." Finn turned to look at her, his expression unreadable in the fading light. "And what is it you want, Tabitha?" "Purpose," she said thoughtfully. "Connection. A place where I belong." She met his gaze steadily. "All things I've found here, thanks to you." The air between them seemed charged with unspoken feelings. For a moment, Tabitha thought he might reach for her hand, or perhaps say something to acknowledge the growing attachment they both surely felt. Instead, he simply nodded and turned his attention back to the horses. The remainder of the winter passed in a rhythm of daily chores, evening lessons with Emmett, and preparations for the school. Finn was true to his word, venturing out on milder days to cut and prepare lumber. Tabitha spent hours drafting lesson plans and writing to her former colleagues in Ohio, requesting any books they could spare. As January turned to February, a blizzard swept across the territory, forcing everyone to remain indoors for nearly a week. Tabitha used the time to begin sewing a quilt for the schoolhouse, a project that soon involved both men, with Emmett cutting fabric squares and Finn designing a pattern that incorporated elements of the Montana landscape. "Never thought I'd be sewing," Emmett grumbled good-naturedly as he awkwardly pushed a needle through the fabric. "If the boys at Fort Laramie could see me now." "Your stitches are better than mine," Finn admitted, comparing their work. Tabitha laughed at their competitive comparison. "You're both doing wonderfully. This quilt will warm many children on cold days." One evening, as they sat by the fire working on the quilt, Emmett began reminiscing about his younger days. "Been thinking about my brother's place in Oregon," he said casually. "He's been after me to come west for years now." Finn looked up, surprised. "You thinking of leaving us, old man?" Emmett shrugged. "Maybe come spring. Bones aren't getting any younger, and he's got a nice setup near the coast. No harsh winters." He shot a meaningful glance between Finn and Tabitha. Besides, 3 might be a crowd around here soon enough. Tabitha felt her cheeks flush. Though she and Finn had developed a comfortable companionship, neither had spoken openly about deeper feelings. Still, she couldn't deny that something had shifted between them. Lingering glances, the brush of hands passing coffee cups, conversations that stretched late into the night. After Emmett retired, an awkward silence fell between them. "He's just talking," Finn finally said. "Gets restless every winter." "Does he?" Tabitha asked softly. "Or does he see something we haven't acknowledged?" Finn set aside his portion of the quilt, his expression serious. "Tabitha, I need to be honest with you. These past months, having you here, it's changed things. Changed me." Her heart quickened. "How so?" "Before you came, I was content enough. Had my land, my cattle, plans for expanding come spring." He gestured around the room. "But it was just a place. Now it feels like a home again." "Finn, let me finish, please." He took a deep breath. "I know you came here under difficult circumstances. I know you're still healing from that betrayal. And I would never presume to rush you or pressure you in any way." Tabitha set her sewing aside and moved to sit beside him. "What are you trying to say, Finn?" In the firelight, his eyes reflected a vulnerability she'd never seen before. "I'm saying that I care for you, Tabitha. More than I thought possible. But I need you to know that whatever you decide about your future, whether that includes me or not, you have a place here. The teaching position is yours regardless." His honesty moved her deeply. Since Charles's abandonment, she'd built walls around her heart, determined never again to be so easily deceived. Yet Finn had quietly, persistently shown her what true integrity looked like. Not with grand gestures or flowery promises, but with consistent, honorable actions day after day. "Finn Abelson," she said slowly, "you are nothing like any man I've ever known." His expression fell slightly. "I reckon that's true enough." "No," she said, reaching for his hand. "You misunderstand me. You are better, kinder, more honest." She squeezed his fingers. "And if I'm cautious, it's not because I don't return your feelings. It's because I've learned how precious true connection is, and I don't want to rush what's growing between us." Hope brightened his features. I mean I care for you too," she said simply. "And I'd like to see where this path leads us, if you're willing to be patient a while longer." His smile was answer enough. Carefully, as if she might break, he raised her hand to his lips and pressed a gentle kiss to her knuckles. "I've waited my whole life to find someone like you, Tabitha Owens. A little more patience is nothing." The first signs of spring arrived in late March, patches of muddy ground appearing through melting snow, the return of meadowlarks with their cheerful songs, and increased activity as the community prepared for planting season. True to their word, the neighboring families began gathering at the Abelson Ranch to help raise the schoolhouse. The building took shape quickly, a simple one-room structure with large windows for natural light, a small bell tower, and a covered porch. Inside, Finn had designed a clever arrangement of benches and desks that could be adjusted for students of different ages. A pot-bellied stove stood ready for winter heating, and bookshelves lined the back wall, already partially filled with donations from Helena and back east. Throughout the construction, Tabitha found herself working alongside the women of the community, forming friendships that helped her feel truly part of this new place. Mrs. Russell, in particular, became a confidant, offering practical advice about frontier living and gentle insights into Finn's character. "Known that boy since he came to the territory," she told Tabitha as they painted the schoolhouse interior. "Never seen him as content as he's been these past months." She gave Tabitha a knowing look. "You've been good for him." "He's been good for me too," Tabitha admitted. As April bloomed into May, preparations for the school's opening intensified. Tabitha divided her time between helping Finn with spring calving, discovering an unexpected aptitude for animal husbandry, and finalizing her teaching materials. The relationship between them continued to deepen, marked by small moments of increasing intimacy, a lingering touch while passing tools, shared laughter over Emmett's increasingly outlandish stories, quiet conversations under the stars after long days of work. One evening, as they walked back from inspecting the nearly complete schoolhouse, Finn reached for her hand. It was a simple gesture, yet it felt momentous, an acknowledgement of what they'd become to each other. "The school bell arrived from Denver today," he said as they strolled. Thought we might hang it this weekend. That would be perfect, Tabitha replied. Opening day is just 2 weeks away. She hesitated before adding, I've been meaning to ask you something, Finn. Anything. With the school finished, I should find my own accommodation. She felt his hand tighten slightly around hers. It wouldn't be proper for me to continue living at your ranch, especially once I'm officially teaching. Finn stopped walking, turning to face her. The setting sun cast a golden glow across his features as he studied her face. I've been thinking about that too, he said carefully. And I have a suggestion, if you're willing to hear it. Of course. He took both her hands in his expression serious yet tender. Tabitha Owens, I know we agreed to take things slowly, and I've tried to honor that. But these past months have only confirmed what I suspected that first day at the way station. You're the woman I've been waiting for my whole life. Tabitha's breath caught as he continued. I'm not asking for an immediate answer. I know proper courtship takes time, but I want you to know my intentions are honorable and my feelings are true. His voice grew softer. I love you, Tabitha. And when you're ready, if you ever are, I'd be the proudest man in Montana Territory to call you my wife. Tears welled in Tabitha's eyes, not from sadness, but from overwhelming emotion. The journey that had begun with abandonment and heartbreak had led her here, to this moment, with this extraordinary man. Oh, Finn, she whispered. I never expected to find love again, especially not here, not like this. She stepped closer to him. But I have. I love you too. His face lit with joy, but he remained restrained. Does that mean you'll consider my proposal? In time? Tabitha laughed softly. Finn Abelson, for a man who's so direct about everything else, you're being remarkably cautious now. She reached up to touch his cheek. I don't need more time. My answer is yes. For a moment, he seemed stunned. Then, with a whoop that startled nearby birds into flight, he lifted her off her feet and spun her in a circle. When he set her down, his eyes were suspiciously bright. Are you sure? He asked, his voice rough with emotion. I know I'm not the sophisticated gentleman you were expecting to marry when you came west. No, she agreed, smiling up at him. You're far better. You're honest and kind and steadfast. She shook her head in wonder. When Charles abandoned me, I thought I'd been left behind, forgotten. But now I see it was the best thing that could have happened. It led me to you. Finn's expression softened. Not anymore. You're with me, he said, echoing his words from that first meeting. And I promise you'll never be left behind again. When he finally kissed her, it felt like coming home. The schoolhouse opening was a community celebration unlike anything Tabitha had experienced. Families from miles around gathered for the ceremony, bringing food, flowers, and small gifts for their new teacher. Reverend Williams came from Helena to offer a blessing, and even the territorial governor sent a letter of congratulations, which Finn read aloud with obvious pride. As the children explored their new learning space, exclaiming over the books and slates, Tabitha stood on the porch watching the scene with joyful disbelief. 6 months ago, she'd been abandoned and alone. Now she was surrounded by community, purpose, and love. Finn appeared beside her, handsome in his Sunday best. Happy? He asked quietly. Beyond words, she replied. Their engagement had been announced that morning to enthusiastic approval from everyone, especially Emmett, who claimed he'd called it from day one. After the celebration, as twilight settled over the land, Finn took Tabitha to the ridge where they'd first viewed the ranch together. A small table had been set up, with a simple meal and a bottle of wine. Thought we deserved our own private celebration, he explained, helping her to a seat. Today marks the beginning of many new chapters. As they dined under the emerging stars, they spoke of plans for the future, expanding the school as more families moved to the area, adding a room to the ranch house for possible boarders, the wedding they'd planned for late summer. I've been thinking, Finn said as they lingered over coffee, about what you said when we first met, that you'd been left behind. Tabitha nodded, the memory now more bittersweet than painful. I believe some people come into our lives only to lead us to where we're meant to be, he continued thoughtfully. If Charles hadn't broken his promise, you wouldn't have been at that station. Our paths might never have crossed. A rather charitable view of his betrayal, Tabitha observed with a small smile. Not charitable, grateful. Finn reached across the table for her hand. Every hardship that brought you here, every disappointment that shaped your journey, they all led you to Montana. To this community that needed you. His voice softened. To me. Tabitha felt tears prick her eyes. I never imagined, when I left Ohio, that I'd find not just a new home, but a true belonging. That's what love is, I think, Finn said simply. Not just romance, but belonging. Finding your place and your people. He gestured toward the schoolhouse, just visible in the distance. You've created something important here, Tabitha. Something that will outlast both of us. We created it together, she corrected gently. Just as we'll create our future together. As night fully descended, they remained on the ridge, watching the stars appear in the vast Montana sky. In the distance, coyotes called to one another, their haunting songs carried on the spring breeze. Tabitha leaned against Finn's shoulder, feeling the solid warmth of him, the steadiness that had drawn her from the beginning. When I first arrived in this territory, she mused, everything seemed so wild, so untamed. I was terrified. And now? Finn asked, his arms secure around her. Tabitha smiled, thinking of the children eager to learn, the community that had embraced her, the man beside her who had shown her what true partnership meant. Now, she said softly, I can't imagine being anywhere else. Finn turned to face her, cupping her cheek in his calloused hand. In his eyes, she saw everything she'd ever wanted but hadn't known to seek. Acceptance, admiration, unwavering commitment. I love you, Tabitha Owens, he said simply. Soon to be Tabitha Abelson. And I love you, Finn Abelson, she replied, her heart full to bursting. My unexpected journey, my truest home. As they sealed their promise with a kiss, Tabitha knew with absolute certainty that she had not been left behind after all. She had been guided exactly where she was meant to be. August 1874 arrived with golden sunshine and fields of wildflowers painting the Montana landscape in vibrant colors. The Abelson Ranch, always well-maintained, had been transformed for the occasion of Finn and Tabitha's wedding. Garlands of prairie roses and wild asters decorated the newly built pergola where they would exchange vows. Benches borrowed from the schoolhouse formed rows for guests, and tables laden with food waited under shade trees. In the main house, Tabitha stood before the mirror in Rebecca's old room, her room, these past 8 months hardly recognizing herself. The wedding dress, crafted by the women of the community as a gift, was simple but beautiful. Cream-colored cotton with delicate embroidery along the bodice and hem. Mrs. Russell had woven wildflowers into Tabitha's upswept hair, and around her neck hung a pearl pendant that had belonged to Finn's mother. You look beautiful, Rebecca said, adjusting the small train. Finn's sister had arrived a week earlier with her husband and children, bringing a warmth and energy to the ranch that delighted Tabitha. The two women had formed an immediate bond, united by their affection for Finn and their shared appreciation of the life he'd built. I can hardly believe this day is here, Tabitha confessed, smoothing the fabric of her skirt. A year ago, I was preparing to marry a man I thought I knew, heading west with such different expectations. Rebecca squeezed her hand. Some journeys take unexpected turns for the best reasons. Finn's a good man, the best I know, and you've brought a light back to his eyes I haven't seen since we were children. A knock at the door heralded Emmett, dressed in a new suit that clearly made him uncomfortable. Ladies, he said, his voice gruff with emotion, it's about time. Everyone's gathered, and the preacher's ready. He offered his arm to Tabitha. Miss Owens, would you do me the honor? Since your father can't be here, I thought perhaps. Tabitha blinked back tears. I would be proud to have you escort me, Emmett. Despite his talk of moving to Oregon, Emmett had remained at the ranch, claiming he couldn't leave until he saw this business through properly. Now he beamed with pride as he prepared to walk Tabitha to her waiting groom. The ceremony itself was simple but profound. Standing before Reverend Williams and their gathered community ranchers, farmers, shopkeepers from Helena, and all 12 of Tabitha's students, Finn and Tabitha exchanged vows they had written themselves. Tabitha, Finn began, his voice steady despite the emotion in his eyes. When you stepped off that stagecoach, lost and alone, something told me my life was about to change. I didn't know then that you would become my partner, my joy, and my home. I promised to stand beside you through all of life's seasons, to honor your strength and independence, to cherish your gentle heart, and to remind you every day that you are never alone. You're with me, always. Tabitha squeezed his hands, her voice clear despite her tears. Finn, you found me at my lowest moment and offered kindness without expectation. You showed me what true character looks like through actions, not just words. In you, I found not just love but respect, partnership, and belonging. I promise to walk this journey with you, to build our dreams together, to face whatever comes with courage and faith, and to love you more deeply with each passing day. When Reverend Williams pronounced them husband and wife, Finn's kiss was tender, yet passionate, a promise of the life they would share. The gathered community erupted in cheers and applause, children threw flower petals, and somewhere in the distance, a meadowlark sang its approval. The celebration continued well into the evening. Tables groaned under the weight of contributed dishes: venison roast, fresh bread, preserves from last summer's harvest, pies of every description. Fiddle music filled the air as couples danced in the clearing near the barn, lanterns casting a warm glow as twilight descended. Finn kept Tabitha close throughout the festivities, his hand rarely leaving hers as they accepted congratulations and well wishes from their neighbors. Mrs. Abelson, he murmured during a quiet moment, testing the name. Has a nice ring to it, don't you think? Tabitha smiled up at him. Indeed it does, Mr. Abelson. Though my students may need time to adjust from Miss Owens. They'll manage, he assured her. Children adapt quicker than adults. Speaking of which, he nodded toward the barn, where several of her students were attempting to teach Rebecca's children a game involving a complicated pattern of string and fingers. They're getting along wonderfully, Tabitha observed. Your niece Emily has already asked if she can stay for the school term. Rebecca mentioned that, Finn acknowledged. Said Emily's quite taken with her new aunt and wants to learn everything you can teach. As the evening progressed, Tabitha found herself drawn into conversation with Mrs. Miller, whose practical wisdom had guided many aspects of wedding planning. Married life suits you already, the older woman commented, noting Tabitha's radiant expression. Though it has its challenges, especially out here. Winter coming on, spring flooding, the isolation. She patted Tabitha's hand. But you've got a good man and a strong community. Those count for more than anything else on the frontier. I never expected to find such connection here, Tabitha admitted. When I left Ohio, I thought I was leaving everything familiar behind. Mrs. Miller nodded sagely. Sometimes we have to leave the known to find where we truly belong. She glanced across the gathering to where her own husband stood talking with Finn. James and I came west 30 years ago with nothing but each other and too many dreams. Haven't regretted a day of it, hard as some have been. As midnight approached, guests began departing with final congratulations and promises to see the newlyweds at church the following Sunday. Rebecca herded her sleepy children toward the wagon, while her husband helped a slightly inebriated Emmett into the back. We'll stay at the Millers tonight as planned, she told Finn, embracing him tightly. Give you two some privacy. She turned to hug Tabitha. Welcome to the family, sister. I couldn't have chosen better for him myself. When the last guest had gone and the ranch stood quiet under the starlit sky, Finn took Tabitha's hand and led her not toward the house, but toward the stables. One more surprise, he explained, saddling Copper while she watched curiously. Not far, I promise. They rode double through the moonlit landscape, Tabitha secure in the circle of Finn's arms. After about 20 minutes, they crested the familiar ridge where they'd shared so many important conversations. But tonight, the ridge held something new, a small cabin, its windows glowing with warm lantern light. Finn, Tabitha gasped. What is this? He helped her dismount, his expression boyishly proud. Our wedding night accommodations. And maybe more. The cabin was small but beautifully crafted, with a stone fireplace already lit and casting dancing shadows on the walls. A handmade bed piled with quilts dominated one side of the single room, while a small table set with wine and fruit stood near the window. Wildflowers in a mason jar added a touch of color to the rustic elegance. When did you build this? Tabitha asked, turning in a slow circle to take it all in. How did you keep it secret? Finn's smile was both shy and pleased. Been working on it since spring, whenever I could slip away. Emmett helped, and some of the men after school raising days. He ran a hand along the smooth wooden doorframe. Thought we might want a place just for us sometimes. Somewhere quiet, away from ranch business and school matters. Tabitha approached him slowly, overwhelmed by the thought and care he'd put into this gift. "It's perfect," she whispered, reaching up to touch his face. "You're perfect." His arms encircled her waist, drawing her closer. "Not perfect," he corrected gently. "Just a man who loves his wife and wants to build a good life with her." "Our life is already good," Tabitha assured him, rising on tiptoe to brush her lips against his. "But this makes it even better." Later, as they lay entwined beneath the quilts, Tabitha rested her head on Finn's chest, listening to the steady rhythm of his heartbeat. Outside, the night sounds of Montana created a soothing symphony: distant coyotes, the soft rustle of wind through prairie grass, an occasional owl's haunting call. "Happy," Finn murmured, his fingers tracing lazy patterns along her bare shoulder. "Completely," she replied, raising her head to look into his eyes. "I never imagined finding this kind of happiness, Finn. Not just love, but purpose, belonging." He tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, his expression tender. "When I first saw you at that station, looking so lost but still standing tall, something told me you were meant to be here. Not just in Montana, but here with me, on this land." Tabitha smiled at the memory. "I thought you were just being kind to a stranded stranger." "Was being kind," he acknowledged, "but also being selfish. Wanted to know the woman who showed such courage even in heartbreak." His voice softened. "Never expected you'd transform not just my life, but the whole community." "We transformed it together," she corrected, settling back against him. "And we'll continue to, day by day." As they drifted toward sleep, wrapped in each other's warmth, Tabitha felt a profound sense of rightness. The journey that had begun with abandonment had led her to the truest home she'd ever known, not just a place, but a person who saw her clearly and loved her completely. "Not anymore, you're with me," Finn had said that first day, words that had seemed merely kind then, but now held the weight of promise fulfilled. She hadn't been left behind. After all, she'd been guided exactly where she belonged. The years that followed brought both joys and challenges to the Abelsons. The school flourished under Tabitha's guidance, eventually expanding to 2 rooms as more families settled in the area. Finn's ranch prospered through careful management and innovation, becoming one of the most respected operations in the territory. Their family grew too. In the spring of 1876, Tabitha gave birth to their first child, a daughter they named Eleanor, after Finn's mother. 2 years later, twins James and William arrived, bringing boisterous energy to the ranch. And in 1881, their family was completed with the birth of little Sarah, who had her mother's auburn hair and her father's determined spirit. Through it all, childbirth and cattle drives, blizzards and droughts, moments of celebration and times of hardship, Finn and Tabitha faced life as they had promised, together, partners in all things. On their 10th anniversary, they returned to the Ridge cabin for a rare night alone, the children safely in Emmett's care back at the main house. The cabin had expanded slightly over the years, gaining a small porch and an additional room, but it remained their private sanctuary. As they sat on the porch watching the sunset paint the Montana sky in brilliant hues, Tabitha leaned against Finn's shoulder, content in the comfortable silence they'd cultivated. 10 years, Finn mused, his arms secure around her waist. Seems like yesterday and forever all at once. Tabitha nodded, understanding exactly what he meant. Remember how nervous I was that first night at the ranch? So certain I'd be moving on as soon as possible. Finn chuckled, the sound rumbling pleasantly against her. And now look at you, the heart of this community, mother of 4, mistress of the most prosperous ranch in 3 counties, and wife to the most stubborn, honorable, loving man in the territory, she added, turning to press a kiss to his jaw, now lightly silvered at the temples, but no less handsome for it. "No regrets?" he asked, a question he still posed occasionally, as if part of him couldn't quite believe his good fortune. "Not one," she assured him firmly. "Every step of my journey led me here. To you, to our children, to this life we've built." She gestured toward the valley below, where their ranch spread in orderly beauty, the schoolhouse visible in the distance. "I didn't just find a home, Finn. I found my purpose." As twilight deepened into night, they moved inside, where Finn stoked the fire against the autumn chill. Tabitha unpacked the basket of food Rebecca had prepared for their celebration: sourdough bread, aged cheese, preserved peaches, and a small cake decorated with wildflower honey. "I have something for you," Finn said as they finished their simple feast. He reached into his pocket and withdrew a small velvet pouch. "Had it made in Helena last month." Tabitha opened the pouch to find a delicate gold locket. Inside was a tiny daguerreotype of their 4 children on one side, and, on the other, a miniature reproduction of the first note Finn had ever written her: a simple invitation to join him for a ride around the ranch property. "Oh, Finn," she breathed, tears pricking her eyes. "It's beautiful. Thought you might wear it when you're teaching," he explained. "Keep us close even when you're busy shaping young minds." She fastened it around her neck immediately, the weight of it comforting against her collarbone. "I have something for you too," she said, retrieving a package from her bag. "Though it's not nearly so fine." Finn unwrapped the parcel to reveal a leather-bound book. Opening it, he found page after page of Tabitha's elegant handwriting, their story, from that first meeting at the way station through 10 years of marriage, illustrated with pressed flowers, snippets of their children's drawings, and small mementos from significant moments. "Tabitha," he said, his voice rough with emotion as he carefully turned the pages. There aren't words. I wanted our children to know how we found each other," she explained. "How sometimes life's greatest disappointments can lead to its greatest blessings." He set the book aside carefully and gathered her into his arms. "Have I told you today how much I love you, Mrs. Abelson?" "You have," she replied, smiling up at him. "But I never tire of hearing it." As they held each other close, the fire crackling beside them and the Montana night spreading its star-filled canopy above, Tabitha reflected on the extraordinary journey that had brought her to this moment. From heartbreak at a lonely way station to this rich, purposeful life, it was more than she could have imagined for herself, more than she might have dared to hope for. "Not anymore, you're with me," Finn had promised that first day. A decade later, those words remained the foundation of everything they'd built together: a home, a family, a community, a legacy of love that would endure long after they were gone. She had not been left behind after all. She had been found.